Welcome back. Now, newly released files by the National Archives show that former Prime Minister, the unflushable Tony Blair's principal private secretary, Jeremy Hayward, wanted to regulate newspapers for the accuracy of their reporting. Writing in 2001, Hayward said, "I assume it's unthinkable to impose accuracy regulations on newspapers. No other industry would get away with the practice of making up stories that even our most serious newspapers indulge in." Well, despite his appeals for regulation on newspapers' accuracy, his efforts were shot down by Blair's advisers, were branded suicidal, not, by the way, immoral or anything like that, just suicidal. It would be bad politics to try it. So, was this a draconian effort by Labour to regulate what the newspapers were reporting? To discuss this, I'm joined now by the former spokesperson of the chair of the Labour Party. It's James Matthewson. James, thank you very much. Look, slightly concerning for me this. Keir Starmer's looking to, in some ways anyway, recreate New Labour. Would New Labour have actually, if they had their way, been pretty happy to just censor the free press?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Patrick. I don't think you're right in saying that Keir Starmer wants to recreate New Labour in that sense. I'm certainly not supportive of many aspects of the New Labour government, but I do support Keir Starmer as leader. But regardless of that, I don't think we're at any risk of press freedoms being imposed by a Labour government, and I don't think this is an exclusive issue in the Labour Party either. I mean, we've seen in recent years Boris Johnson's government especially trying to curtail freedom of the press. I think whoever's in power, to be honest, it's in their best interest for themselves to try and keep as much out of the press as they can. So I don't think it's a party political issue, but it is important that we protect freedom of the press. You're absolutely right.
I'm just intrigued to get your take on the Blair issue, though, really, because I am amazed by Tony Blair, Teflon Tony, really, when you think about some of the issues that he faced and was a part of during his time as Prime Minister. Many good aspects to Blair, many things that people can learn from, and I hold my hands up to that completely. I do think that things, though, like weapons of mass destruction, a variety of certain question marks around David Kelly, which we're not allowed to go into, of course, and also secret backroom deals with the IRA, which really gave terrorists quite literally a get-out-of-jail-free card. I think he's managed to get off quite lightly with stuff like that. Do you think that Tony Blair has got away with it?
I don't think that anything in particular. I mean, when it comes to Tony Blair, particularly as a leader, I mean, he's not my favourite Labour leader of all time, far from it. I do think, the Iraq issue especially is still hugely polarising, not just in the Labour Party, but in the country. Many people were thrilled with the New Labour victory, in 1997, my family especially, and, people in my community hugely so, because it meant a huge amount. And there was a huge reform and huge change made by that government, and later by Gordon Brown's government as well. And, I do think there's a huge amount of pros, but like anything, there's always cons. I don't think, though, when it comes to accountability of the press, particularly when we look at this new information released by the National Archives, there's anything to be concerned about, particularly because Jeremy Hayward, as we know, wasn't a Labour person. He wasn't affiliated to the Labour Party. He was a civil servant, a hugely respected civil servant as well.
Yes, indeed. Does the left itself have a problem with free speech? I can't help but feel as though a lot of the tantrums that I've seen, a lot of the cancellations that take place appear to be done at the hand of the people towards the left of society. I think people on the right tend to be a little bit more live and let live when it comes to freedom of speech. Your views?
I think you'd probably be inclined to say that, wouldn't you, Patrick? But I do disagree, because as a proud left-winger myself, I don't have an issue with freedom of speech. I invite criticism of my views. I do think in recent years there's been a conflation of very what I would call hyper-woke individuals who often aren't politically affiliated in any way, trying to shut down or cancel freedom of speech. Totally agree with you there. Cancelling anybody is nonsense. It's nonsense. And I don't think any genuine left-winger who wants to be in government and wants to pursue policies to change people's lives for the better would agree with it in any way. Yeah,
I mean, I think I'm just looking at, for example, the kind of nonsense that like J.K. Rowling, or I'm quoting now, I'm certainly not calling her a TERF to have to put up with online and people like that. I mean, look, there are various different groups out there that, as we all know, when someone maybe tries to set up some kind of, I don't know, new media company or something, and they don't like the idea of it, then they go, right, you need to ban all your advertisers, get them cancelled. Even down to people, there was a train company, I think it was Virgin Trains years ago, they stopped selling the Daily Mail because one person complained that they had to look at the Daily Mail as they walked through the coffee cart. All of this stuff, that doesn't happen with right-wingers in this country, does it? I mean, it is just people on the left.
There's a reason for that, and I would say it's because the majority of our press and media is skewed in favour of the right. It's skewed in favour of the right, and that's because, there are a lot of people with conservative views in this country, right? It is their right and their freedom to have their views and, to be represented. But there is less representation for people on the left, and as a result, you hear them complaining more about it. They're going to complain more about it. But I do think when it comes to issues, like J.K. Rowling, like the gender debate, that's been hugely divisive. I think the extremes on both sides that we're seeing are hugely concerning. It's important for people to take a reasoned approach.
Final question, very quick one. Would you bring back Blair?
In regard to the current government, absolutely. In a heartbeat, there isn't a single Conservative Prime Minister that I've seen that I wouldn't rather have Tony Blair and John. Not saying a lot, because like I say, I'm not his biggest fan, but in comparison to this shower, any day of the week.
All right, well, I certainly agree to disagree on that one. James, always a pleasure. James Matthewson there, easy for me to say, spokesperson of the chair of the Labour Party, former spokesperson of the chair of the Labour Party.